Hi Year 9, this is your third video clip and assignment on music theory, and we're going to be discussing intervals today. This is based on the foundation work you've done on the major and minor scales and key signatures, which you've all done brilliantly at. That should really help you when we're talking about intervals. Now, an interval is quite simply the gap or the space between two notes. And in intervals, we always work from the bottom note up. Even if we're looking at two notes and the first one is higher than the second, we still look at the lowest note and work up from there. First things first, we're going to use a C major scale because we all know that C major doesn't have any sharps or flats, so it makes it nice and easy when we're thinking of all the white notes. So if I just looked at these first two notes here, the interval between these two notes, we can all see that that is, oh, better have a treble clef there. We can all see that that is a C and a D, middle C and D. So the interval between those two notes in simple terms is a second. So we go 1 and then count up 2. So that is a second of some sort. Now, if I look at this interval here between this note, the middle C, and the E, C, D, E, we can see that that is 1, 2, 3 steps. So that is a third. So I'll just write that in. And then you could quite easily, you're all very intelligent young men, you could see that we can go from C to F. That would be a fourth, C, D, E, F. C to G is a fifth, C, D, E, F, G. C to A is a sixth, C to B is a seventh, and C to C is an eighth, or I can hear you screaming, octave. Okay, so that's the most simple terms of describing an interval. Now, there are also variants of each interval. So we're going to look at, first of all, major intervals. Okay. Now, a major interval is an interval that can be found, the best way to describe it can be found in the scale of the bottom note. Okay, we call that diatonic as well. So if it's using the notes of the scale of that bottom note, it's diatonic, or we can call it major. So if we're looking C to D, we know that C major has no sharps and flats, so it should all be white notes. So essentially, if we get C as our bottom note, and then what the next note is a white note, it's got to be major. So C to D is a major second. C to E is a major third. C to F we call a perfect fourth. Now, here's something that we need to highlight here. The fourth and the fifth intervals and the octave, or the eighth, are always perfect. They are not major. There is no such thing as a major fourth, a major fifth, or a major eighth or octave. They are always perfect. So we have perfect fourth, a perfect fifth, and a perfect octave, a major sixth, and a major seventh. So I'll just do that again. So here we've got a major second, C to D, C to E is a major third, C to F is a perfect fourth, C to G is a perfect fifth, C to A is a major sixth, C to B is a major seventh, and C to C is a perfect octave. Okay, so that's quite simple. Now, if I just kind of adjust that and put it onto, for example, D major. Okay, now we know from our work on key signatures, to find the key signature of D major, we know it's a sharp key because it doesn't sound like a flat key. So we go down a semitone from D to get C sharp. Okay, and then we use all of the sharps leading up to that sharp. So C sharp, Father, and Charles. So we know that D major has D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D in the scale. So if I were to give you an interval that had a D at the bottom as the lowest note, and then I had an F sharp above it, I'd go, right, D, E, F sharp, right, that's a third. Is F sharp in the key signature of D major, and therefore in its scale, is it diatonic to that scale? Yes, so that is a major third. If I went D, bottom note, A, I'd go D, E, F sharp, G, A, right, that's a fifth, and I know that there cannot be a major fifth. Is A in the scale of D major? Yes, so it is a perfect fifth. Okay? So that's that. Now let's move on to minor intervals then. So a minor interval is an interval that has been kind of squashed by a semitone. Now you all know a semitone is half a step. So for example, from F sharp to F natural is a semitone, or from F to E is a semitone, E to E flat is a semitone, and so forth. So something that's been squashed, a major or perfect interval, oh no, wait a minute, a major interval that has been squashed by a semitone. I'll tell you why I've just made that little mistake, and I'll make that clear in a minute. So let's look at this interval here, C to D, is currently a major second. Now, say if I go to here and look at this interval now, put my treble clef back in, it is no longer C to D natural, it's C to D flat. Can you see that? So what have I done to that original interval C to D? I have lowered it or squashed it by a semitone by making it C to D flat now. So that becomes a minor second. Okay? If I look at this one, C to E flat, this original major third of C to E has been squashed by a semitone, and therefore C to E flat is a minor third. Now I'm just going to miss out the fourth and the fifth for a moment. C to A flat, or C to A is a major sixth, so if I squash it by a semitone it becomes minor. C to A flat is a minor sixth. C to B flat is a minor seventh. Now, I just said I would come back to this fourth and this fifth. Now, C to F is a perfect fourth because no such thing exists as a major fourth. Okay? Now, because of this, it's also different when you squash it by a semitone. So there's no such thing as a minor fourth either. As soon as we squash a perfect interval by a semitone, it becomes diminished. Okay, so immediately C to F, as soon as we squash it and make it F flat, it becomes diminished. So this is C to F is a diminished fourth, C to G flat is a diminished fifth, and C to C flat is a diminished octave. Okay, so you've got to remember that. Now another thing you might be shouting out to me is that this F flat is actually an E natural. Especially if you play the piano, or everybody needs a piano keyboard available to them really when they're doing theory, even if you're a pianist or not. F flat, if you think about it on a piano keyboard, let me just draw you one very quickly on my scribbled piano keyboard. Should have one ready really. Here we go. Just D, D, E, F, G, A, B. Right, okay. If you look on here, look. Here's F, all right? So if we squash it by a semitone F and make it F flat, it is actually E natural. Now that's called an enharmonic equivalent. So when a note is written differently, but it's the same note, it's called an enharmonic equivalent. So E and F flat are enharmonic equivalents. And so is C flat and B. Can you see? Because it's not got the black note in between. That semitone goes from a C to a B. So C flat would be the same as B natural. Now, you might therefore say that C to F flat is actually in fact C to E and therefore a major third. Incorrect. Because we've spelt it this way as such, C to F, it has to be a fourth. It cannot be a third because it's C, D, E, F, it's a fourth. So we need to find an alternative way of describing it. So we call C to F flat a fourth, so we must call it a diminished fourth because it is a semitone lower than that perfect fourth. Okay, same applies with the perfect octave C to C being flattened to a C flat. C flat is actually B, so you might say, well, that's a major seventh. No, because it's C to C, and C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C is an eighth, an octave. So we must describe it as such. So C to C flat is a diminished octave. Okay, so there we have minor intervals and diminished. Now, what happens if we squash those again? Now, when a major interval is squashed by a semitone, we've just discovered it becomes minor or diminished. But what happens if this is squashed again and we get C to D double flat, for example? Now, C to D double flat is actually, again, enharmonically just a C. It's the same note, isn't it? D double flat, if you flatten it to D flat, and then again it becomes a C. But C to D double flat is actually a second because it's still written there. So we have to describe it as such. As soon as we make that minor interval another semitone lower, then it becomes diminished. So C to D double flat would be diminished. C to A double flat would be diminished, diminished, yeah. Okay, so there we go. So a minor interval that's squashed by a semitone again becomes diminished. Now let's look at augmented intervals then. This is when we increase the interval by a semitone, so we kind of stretch it instead of squashing it. So now imagine C to D was a major second because it was in the scale of C major. C to D sharp is a semitone higher than that, so that becomes augmented. Okay? C to E sharp, which actually enharmonically is an F, isn't it? But we can't call it a perfect fourth, we have to call it a third of some sort. So C to E sharp is an augmented third. C to F sharp, augmented fourth. C to G sharp, augmented fifth. C to A sharp, augmented sixth. C to B sharp, augmented seventh. And C to C sharp, augmented octave or eighth. So you see the perfect intervals are the same as the major in this way in terms of just stretching them, they all become augmented. There's another very special interval here. If we just go back to C to F sharp, and it was actually here, the same interval to listen to, C to G flat actually. This is also called a tritone, and when we're talking about music history, and we'll discuss the sound that makes, it's actually 3 whole tones. If I show you on the keyboard, there's C, look, C to F sharp, or C to G flat, which is the same note, an enharmonic equivalent, is actually 1, 2, 3 whole tones, and therefore it was called the tritone. And in the Renaissance period, this was actually labelled the devil's chord because it's got that da da. It's got that sound that makes us feel kind of a sense of dread, and it was called the devil's interval for that reason. And it's been used throughout music history to create that feeling of tension. Okay, so that should have given you an explanation how to find how to recognise intervals as major, minor, diminished or augmented. Now, it's all very well if it's in C major, of course, because we know that C major's got white notes, and it's easy peasy because if there is an accidental, as in a sharp or a flat, then we can immediately recognise it's not going to be major. However, that's not always the case. So you do need to go back to that knowledge of those major key signatures that you had before to work out what should be in that scale of that bottom note. So let's give you a few examples and then you can go on to complete the worksheet that I've put on Google Classroom. So I'm just going to give us a few. So let's work out this one to start with, and then I'll give you some more. Let's have this one, and then let's do that one. Right, okay, so here we go. We've got, first of all, we need to work out what this bottom note is. So that's a G, so I'm going to write that in, every good, yeah? And then every good boy deserves, that's a D. So this is a good way to do it if you're slightly unsure, is write the notes in so you completely know what you're doing. So now this bottom note is the one we're going to concern ourselves with. G, right, now in G major, is this a sharp or a flat key? Right, it's a sharp key because it doesn't sound like a flat key. So we go down a semitone from the tonic to find the last sharp. Down a semitone from G is F sharp, farther. That's all we're going to have, F sharp in the key signature. Okay, so our notes are, I'm just going to write them out. If you're really finding this quite difficult, quite challenging, it's a really good idea to go through this process. Okay, so there's my scale of G major. Now anything in that scale is going to be major or perfect for the fourth, fifth and octave. This one is, now we need to count 1, G, A, B, C, D, a fifth. So we know it's a fifth right away. So we immediately know that it cannot be major or minor in fact. So now let's look and see if D is in the scale of G major. Yes, because the only black note in G major is F sharp. So D is, so that would have to be a perfect fifth. Hopefully that's what you've said whilst you're watching the video. There's a perfect fifth. All right, let's have a look at this one. So now we have an A and a C. So we're immediately looking at the bottom note, which is an A. We go A major, right, sharps or flats, that's a sharp key. So I go down a semitone from A to find the final sharp, G sharp, and then I include all the sharps leading up to that sharp. Father Charles goes. So it's got F sharp, C sharp and G sharp this time. So I'm going to write my scale of A major out. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp and A. Okay, there's my scale. Now, I look at the next note and I think, right, that's a third. A, B, C is a third. And that C is a C natural. Now, as I go up through my scale, I think, oh, wait a minute. This should be, if this was a C sharp, it would be a major third, but it's not, it's a C natural. And I think to myself, especially if I'm looking at my keyboard, I go down a semitone, right, it's been squashed by a semitone, so that major third becomes a minor third. There we go. So it's a minor third. And then the final one here is an example. This one we have an E flat. So I'm going to write that down. Be careful to recognise that. And here I have an A natural. Okay, so my first thing is to work out the key signature of E flat major. So E flat major is a flat key. You can hear that, can't you? E flat major. So we include all of the flats leading up to the tonic flat and add one more. So battle ends, there it is, plus one more and. So it's got B flat, E flat and A flat. So I write my scale out, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D and E flat. Right, there we go. That should help me now. Now, E flat to A is E, F, G, A is a fourth. Okay, so I know if it's in this scale, it's going to have to be a perfect fourth because I cannot have a major fourth. Now, if I go up through the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, wait a minute, A flat would be a perfect fourth. Now, this is actually A natural. So is that a semitone lower than A flat or is it a semitone higher? I can hear you scream to me, A natural is a semitone higher. So that means we are going to have an augmented fourth at this point. Okay? Now I hope that that's helped you to understand how we work out intervals. It does seem like quite a long process when you're beginning. But as soon as you've kind of clicked and you've got that, it's absolutely foolproof. And it won't take you long at all to work out those intervals. So I hope that's helpful. There is a worksheet on Google Classroom, and at the beginning of the worksheet, all that I've said here is really kind of summarised to hopefully give you just a little bit more confidence to be able to answer those questions. Some of you will find it quite easy. It doesn't hurt you to revise that practice anyway. So go ahead and complete that for this week, and hopefully might be able to catch up in person soon. Okay, bye-bye.